This is this is absolute horror. He hires a blind man to get the sympathy vote from the jury. Like, that's what.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Narratives and Nonsense. I am Jordan. You can also call me Gillidan. This here is Connor, and we are a couple of friends talking about random and recent stories, both newsworthy or otherwise. As far as things go, this is our second episode, and while last week was a little bit more about getting to know us as people and kind of talking about all sorts of crazy highlights, this week is going to be a little bit more how our show focuses a bit, both on the local news side of things, the things going on in our personal lives and in a grander scheme, and then diving in a little bit more on specific narratives that we just want to dive in and talk about. So, in terms of new stuff, just to get the ball rolling with that, for me personally, last week we talked about how both of us were feeling a little bit sick. I went and got two different COVID tests. One being the regular test, where you go through a drive-through. I was in that line for 2.5 hours after the New Year's holiday stuff. I think that's what made the line so big. But went and did that. Got those results as well as a rapid test, and both times it came back negative this last Monday and Wednesday. So I probably did not have COVID-19. Um, there's the little asterisk because it's tricky with pandemic stuff and variants. Um, the little asterisk is I was starting to get less symptomatic on Monday. That was the long form test, and then I was not symptomatic at all Wednesday, the following test with the rapid kit. Now, does that skew the results, or I believe it's been slightly less effective. It's still very good at detecting Omicron whenever you take any of the like antigen tests, rapid or otherwise, but that could potentially skew the results as well, or it's a combination of both. But it's a pretty safe bet to say I didn't have COVID, and that's great. I like knowing that. um, Connor, how have you been feeling?
Well, first off, what's up, everybody? It's the master of five strings with no fucking rings, Connor. But I've been doing all right. I had a rough go of it at work this week. Had a lot of overtime,
Mhm.
just classic getting stuck with calls, and we had a bit of an accident.
Oh,
At We had a trailer in a bay, and we had an overhead door, like a garage door, about halfway down, and we took off with the trailer, and it was like $5,000 in damage, so that was good. Um,
what?
Luckily, I'm a helper, so it wasn't really on me in the company's eyes, but I still feel like a real royal dummy for letting that one happen.
Yeah. Well, like what? So when you're saying that the door ripped, what like happened with it? Is that something where you've got
So
everything mostly in and then you just have like a string or a chain connected that you missed or
no, so like for some reason, this is what happened was we had a trailer in a warehouse bay.
yeah.
Apologize if you don't know what that looks like, but just Google it and you'll probably find it. For some reason, some people like to lower the door down like a little bit of the way to keep heat in. Doesn't
Yeah.
really do anything, and I don't like doing it. And somebody had done us for that. Usually, I just let the door go all the way up, and I'm like,
Yeah.
you just got to pay the heating bills, homie. Sorry, I'm not dealing with this. I don't want to hit the doors. But this other guy had lowered it down, and we knew this. We were aware of this fact,
Yeah.
but just the job we were working on was a bit of a thing. So we had a trailer with a scissor lift on it, and the door was about 3/4 of the way down, and we
Yeah.
just went forward with the scissor lift, and the all the panels crumpled out and got like a lot of them got like detracked. It took a long time to keep them back out,
Yeah.
and I was in like it was like probably minus 43 with the wind chill, and I'm up on an extension
Jeez.
ladder with like a little sledgehammer, just beating this door back in with another lead hand, and
Just
like
so it gets
my
on the
face
track again
mask.
and rolls out.
Yeah, well, just to get it down, right? Like we because basically like half the door was still good, so we
Mhm.
just had to disconnect the bad part, lower it down to the ground, take out the panels, re-stack the panels in, and then just attach the door once again, and then boom, it was easy. But geez, getting it down, like if we were at the shop and there were a lot of people to help us, but like I don't know if we could have done it if it was just me and him.
Yeah. No,
because
I
it was
mean,
messed.
goodness, I've messed with like a regular ass garage door that's had trouble going up up and down the track. Like it comes off slightly and you're just sitting there like bashing your head against it like come like
Oh yeah,
the shop doors where you've got like 8 to 12 panels that are each like, at least this big.
they're 2 feet tall
Yeah, like
each.
no, I
Yeah.
believe that. I know that's something where I'm guilty of doing that for the few times that I go to our works warehouse, where it's just like, oh yeah, like if we're not actively using the store, please lower it most of the way so that like we know something's happening, but we're not. But yeah, no,
It makes sense. It's one of those things where it's like
it's like
I
ah,
try to just avoid it totally. Like
yeah,
I would rather get yelled at about the heat than the door. And
yeah,
but
yeah.
we
No,
were
that's fair.
rushing and got caught.
Ah, man. Well, that's unfortunate. Talking about weather stuff though, I mean, goodness, it's been freaking cold down here in Colorado. It's this last week we finally got snow. We talked about that on last week's podcast after all of the Marshall Fire stuff. The snow decided to pull an Alanis Morissette and come after the fire had happened. But what we've had, I don't know, 3 to 5 inches of snow twice, I want to say. I mean, it's been a lot. I've had to brush my car off. I had to like
Oh,
actually go to my vehicle. What? Um, but what, the last couple of days there's been like a high of 7. It's just it's pretty chilly. We don't usually get that cold um throughout the year. We do have our lower points. It's usually under freezing, but 7 is that's frigid to say the least. Get a little water.
all right.
Anyway, how's it been up in Canada?
The last 2 weeks have definitely been cold.
Yep.
Before that though, like especially before about Christmas,
Mhm.
it was really seasonably like very, very warm. Like it was only about -10 going into December, which is pretty insane.
Yeah.
We
Just
were doing
minus
weather strip
10.
at one.
Is
Oh
that
yeah,
Fahrenheit
I
or
was doing
Celsius?
Celsius.
Okay.
So it's like
That's it's like
minus 20.
20s.
It's like 20s. Yeah,
Yeah,
right in there.
that
But
sounds
like
about
it
right.
was that's good for me, man. Like I was doing weather strip in a t-shirt and jeans one day,
Yeah.
and it was like December. I'm like, oh my God, this is cool.
Yeah.
Came in quick, but we're back up. Monday's supposed to be +2, so going from -40, which is about like -6 or 7 to
Yeah.
like 30, like low to mid 30s. So that's
Like
pretty
just a
nice.
little bit above freezing sometimes.
Yeah,
Like if there's direct
in
sunlight,
that area.
it feels lightly warm.
I will take 0, man. 0 is fine for all Connors. Yeah,
Yeah.
0 Celsius, like I won't complain. Like I'll take it.
Cool. Well, what else outside of that? On the subject of warehouse stuff, dude, I got roasted yesterday. So, towards the end of the day, we're starting to slow down. We're doing more organizational stuff rather than like heavy lifting to and from. While I was on
Yeah,
loan to the warehouse, and uh, the reason I got roasted was we got on the subject of Taco Bell and Mountain Dew and stuff like that, and I said, all right, a little hot take for my personal tastes. Code Red is a lot better than Baja Blast, and I immediately got shot down. And I'm like, but I like cherry. Like Code Red is awesome. I mean, it's been a
yeah,
I would say a staple of Mountain Dew, at least for like grocery store stuff for quite a while. It hasn't been in like a restaurant forever. Like the only other flavor besides just regular
yeah,
Mountain Dew is Baja Blast at Taco Bell. Like that's their
yeah,
thing. And that's a darn shame because every time that I go to the grocery store, there's a new flavor of Mountain Dew. And I kind of want that in a
yeah,
restaurant now. Like,
yeah.
my goodness.
Seriously. Oh.
No, but
Well,
I
and they
don't
always
know.
have
Mm,
like they had those giant cans for a while for Mountain Dew that you
mm,
could get. They were almost like an energy drink size, and they
yeah.
code red for that. Like anytime they do something like that, they always have code red too.
Yep, yep. But for the different flavors of stuff, I mean, like Baja Blast is in stores now, which is kind of cool. There's uh, what the most recent one I tried was Gingerbread Mountain Dew. That was weird. Drinking
Yeah,
gingerbread, I mean, it's exactly how it's described. You're drinking gingerbread. I barely even call it Mountain Dew-esque. Like,
yeah.
it almost
It's
doesn't
like
even
Major
feel like
Melon,
a
one of those really far off ones.
Yeah, it's almost not even like drinking a carbonated beverage. You're just like, gingerbread, hello.
Interesting.
It's so weird.
Huh.
Um, that was the most weird one I've tried recently. There's the lightning strike. Is that it? That one was a good one. That came out slightly recently, I want to say.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
Um,
I've not had
what
that one
else?
yet. It is in my grocery store though,
Yeah.
which is
Major
weird.
melon. That one's a good one. I
That was good.
actually melon flavored things. I want to see more watermelon flavored
Y-
soda stuff.
That is my favorite of the like artificial flavors. I love
Yeah,
watermelon.
that one's pretty good.
So I was
But
really stoked to see that.
yeah, Mountain Dew's been popping off, at least in
Yep.
stores. In restaurants, it's just Mountain Dew and Baja
Yeah.
for Taco Bell.
You usually don't find Mountain Dew too often in most restaurants I find, unless you're at like
No,
a fountain.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
It
that's
is nice
that's
when you get it
exactly
though.
what I'm thinking of is the fountain.
Yeah.
I'm saying restaurants, including fast food, which I
Yeah, I
that's my
fair.
like primary form of restaurant.
But I would enjoy it. I would enjoy it at sit down places too.
Yeah,
I like some
a
Mountain Dew,
lot of sit
damn it.
down places just settle for Coke, Diet
Yeah.
Coke, and Sprite, and they call it a day, and
Like
that's
root
that's a
beer.
shame. But yeah. Outside of that, what else is new this week? Oh, so my friend John and I, we've been talking about it for months, and finally we managed to get a time to get together and play some Kingdom Hearts because he's never been through the entirety of that uh, crapshoot of a story. It's I don't want to say it's an outright guilty pleasure because I will happily admit to liking Kingdom Hearts, but I feel like I like Kingdom Hearts how I like Star Wars in that I acknowledge that it's not all perfect, and we should probably have like a segment talking about that kind of stuff somewhere down the line. But my goodness, there's so much Kingdom Hearts like games and story to go through. He was like, "Oh, we're just going through the main trilogy," and I looked at him dead in the eyes and I went, "The main trilogy, my dude? There is no main trilogy. They have numbers, but they mean nothing. Every
Literally.
game is important." Like, so we've started that journey with the very first one because I mean
Of
that's the
course.
best way to start it off.
Simple and clean.
Simple and clean. Yep. So that's personal news things. In the wider world, what student loans have been put on pause here in the States until May now. It was going to be resuming at the end of this month. That has now been delayed again. I don't know. This is like the third or fourth time. Um, I think it's a good thing because it gives people just that little bit of flexibility pre and post college uh, to
Yeah.
start figuring all of that stuff out. And then for me personally, it's something where I've been mostly paying everything on time as if those pauses weren't even a thing. So really, it's just a way of keeping my own interest down, which is nice.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, I can never complain about saving a little extra on interest.
yeah, seriously. So there's that. You had a story about the moon that you wanted to pull on.
Uh, well, apparently China has a space program and they're still probing around on the moon. That was really like half of it for me. Because I guess honestly they found out about this like a decade ago, so I'm not really sure. But I was just like, wow, China's still going at the moon. Okay, I didn't
Well,
really think we were still there for much,
yeah,
but
well,
hey,
that's the
I
thing
guess
is, I thought that they had discovered water on the moon. I might be thinking of Mars, which Mars
yeah,
makes sense. Like it has the ice caps, but the moon's a
that
little
is
bit
fair.
harder because it's tidally locked. Like we always see the same face. So, and I haven't seen anything on the story, so I'm imagining that the water's just on the dark side of the moon where it's a little bit colder.
Yeah,
But how much
that would be
water
my
and
thing.
whatnot, I don't know. It is cool to see that China is looking at the moon, like Antarctica, it's one of those things where it's a like international waters type thing. It belongs to everybody. No one is allowed to like specifically
Yeah,
lay
no,
claim.
totally.
But China's space program, I mean, they've been in space and doing stuff like in the International Space Station for a couple of decades, if I'm correct.
Yeah,
But
I
like,
think so.
I had no idea that they were
Yeah.
launching probes either. Like, that's pretty cool.
So to further clarify, I apologize. This
Hmm.
has confirmed that there is in fact water on the moon using
Ah,
rock and soil samples. They have sent a probe. That is why.
so they
Okay, that makes
literally
more
like
sense now.
picked it up and went, "Oh yeah, that's
Yep.
water, all right," or that's ice, I guess, if it's on the cold side.
Yes.
Sweet. We could
And
have
they
a
literally
moon
are comparing
base.
it to a field trip to the moon.
So what I'm
Ooh,
hearing is
which one?
Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk are going to be fighting China to get to the moon and back and set up a
Apparently,
little water colony. Hey, we're another step closer. We thought we'd be on the
to
moon
vapor
like
farming.
2 decades ago. We're still working on it, but hey, we're getting there.
I
We've
just need to go
landed.
become a vapor farm. I just need to go become a vapor farmer on the moon.
Yeah, there you go. Just have moisture evaporators
Then
from
it will
Star
start.
Wars. What
Yes.
goodness, we're at what 60 years after the first moon landing and we still don't have a base. What,
Jesus.
the future could
I
have been so
know.
much
How do we not have a
cooler.
moon base? Seriously.
Oh man,
Like, ugh. And
we'll
they're all
see
like,
it.
well, it costs billions of dollars to transport small amounts to the moon. It's like, well, fucking get on it. You're not using it to fix the roads.
That's why we have
Come
Jeffy
on.
Bezos doing it.
Yeah,
Him and
seriously. Like,
Elon.
Lord.
I wonder how much of that plays into their different respective approaches because I know Elon's whole thing with SpaceX is being able to launch and land again with the same rocket to try to reduce that cost
Yeah.
overhead. I don't
Yeah.
think Blue Origin, that's Jeffy's space
Mm-hmm.
stuff. I don't think Blue Origin is doing any of that. It's just another rocket
Space
builder.
program.
Yeah, I
Uh,
I, I don't know what involved. Apparently, it's been around since like early 2000, which is weird to think about. I don't know what they've been doing prior to him running
huh.
Amazon, the biggest moving company on the planet. Like,
Yeah.
this is just the next step is, yes, we need delivery to space. Could you imagine? Like, what's the
Oh,
shipping cost for my two
it's
dollar
really.
like plant feeder that I need in my rocket?
I
Oh
want
my
to say
god.
it's like, it's close to $1 million per kilogram or something like that.
Jeez.
It's a lot
Yeah. Every
to
astronaut's
get
gonna have
something
to
up
be a
there.
bajillionaire. Which, I mean,
Yeah.
what, they thought about having a hotel in space. I say thought about it. They actively have plans for that. I don't know how that'll work.
Yeah.
They also have
Yeah.
plans for like an underwater base where it's all just at the bottom of the ocean. And at that point, I
Hmm.
don't know why. Like, I've been scuba diving. I've seen what like a coral reef looks like when you're
Hard to escape
underwater.
from underwater.
I guess it's weird.
It's
Anything goes
Guantanamo times
wrong,
two.
good luck.
Everything is fuck, Jesus.
Yeah. If you're,
Oh,
ooh, this is a weird question. If you're in an underwater base at the bottom of the ocean, I know when you have like scuba stuff, you have to worry about decompression sickness and the like. I
yeah.
imagine you still have some form of that yet that you have to worry about because people get decompression sickness going from sea level to even as far as just going to Colorado in the Mile High City. Like,
Yeah.
that's something that people experience and worry about. And I wonder if
Yeah.
that's a similar situation if you were to go to a base, like a little thing at the bottom of the ocean, or if you can just be pressurized the entire way through and that's enough. Because I know we're pressurized
Mm,
going into planes up in the upper atmosphere, but
yeah.
eh. Anyway, science is fun. So, moon stuff. I guess this is slightly more political things. News came out for the three that were tried for the killing of Ahmed Arbery, and they are sentenced to life in prison. Uh, I don't have much comment on that because that is politically hot territory. Um, but some of them have no parole, some do. It's interesting. And then you had a story about euthanasia on another
Yeah.
note.
So a real chipper topic here. The first non-terminally ill Colombian dies by euthanasia. And apparently this guy had some kind of pulmonary disease. I totally know what that means, but he elected to go through euthanasia in October, I guess it was. So
Okay, so
Yeah,
he
that
did have something wrong with him. It just wasn't a terminal illness.
yeah, it was
Okay.
a consistent thing.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting thought is if somebody's like, yeah, I'm good, just here's I don't know how much euthanasia would cost. Like I imagine it's a couple of grand. I feel like it's more uh not reasonable. That's not the word I'm looking for. I feel like it's more financially easier to like elect for euthanasia. Like if you get to a point in your life
Yeah,
where you're like, you know what, I've lived a good life, I've had a good time with friends and family and stuff like that. If you just elect to say, yeah, you know what, I have all of my things in order. This goes to them. This goes to them. We're gonna call
yeah,
it here. Why not? Like that's a weird moral question. Is if someone's like hit that point of yeah, we're good, do you just let them say, yeah, sure? In his case, you know, he had some kind of ailment that he was struggling
yeah.
with,
He looks
but
pretty rough. He's on oxygen and a few other things in a couple of pictures.
yeah, yeah, like that's something where his quality of life was starting to dip, but we've started getting to this point where people can reasonably live significantly further than they would otherwise. And if
Yeah,
somebody's like, yeah, you know, I'm good, um, like how much of that should or shouldn't we intervene with? I think if that's something where like once you hit like 70s and above, if that's something that you elect for, I feel like that's not necessarily a bad thing. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't wish it on people. I don't
yeah,
want people to do it unless they specifically are saying like, yeah, I'm good. Like it's not even a suicidal thing, and they'd probably have to go through like some kind of a mental checklist just to make sure like, hey,
yeah. Of
are you
course,
happy? Are you in a good place? Is this something that we need to try to fix or work towards? Is it
you
worth
need to
trying to
be in
fix?
your right mind to make that decision.
Yeah, yeah, sound mind and sound, well,
That's
not
good.
perfectly sound body, I imagine, but
Yeah, of sound mind at least.
yeah, I think of sound body makes that question weirder.
That is fair. I didn't really think
Um,
about that.
yeah,
How does that affect your bias, or
yeah,
can you really make that decision if you're in a lot of pain? It's like, well, that kind of compromises your judgment, obviously.
yeah, and well, like I feel like that's something
Or it
where
could, I guess.
we're as a as a society, I feel like as people we're more forgiving or more willing to say, okay, yeah, if you elect for euthanasia, if you're struggling through an illness, terminal, or in the case of the Colombian,
Yeah,
otherwise, you know, he was still going through the ringer with it. I feel like
it's
that's
an
something
ongoing
that,
condition.
yeah, I think that's something that we're more willing to accept that and say, okay, you know what, this is your time to depart. Like you're choosing this.
Yeah,
This is your selection. But it does make it a weird question of how much of that is because what a lot of countries make it illegal for suicide or assisting suicide, like by
yep,
law, which
yeah,
is always a funny thing. I found out like why they do that is so that if somebody is attempting a police officer or a member of like the first responder units and the like can break into your house and try to stop it if there's
yeah,
reasonable belief with it.
yeah. It
Um,
gives them
it gives them the
authority
legal
to,
loophole
yeah,
and authority to
yeah,
jump in.
intervene.
Yeah, but it's weird questions, certainly. So that's basically the extent of the news from this last week. And now for what we really wanted to talk about. Uh,
On that chipper note,
yeah, on that chipper note, I guess I guess you know the question of do you let people die or not is addressed in the new Spider-Man. So we'll avoid spoiler territory initially. We're just going to talk about the latest movie, how it compares with some of the other films, as well as the the box office stuff, because I think that's a fun and reasonable way to measure the metrics of a movie and how popular it is. Um, so No Way Home. Connor, you've seen it. I've seen it.
yeah.
I want to see it
Uh,
again. I almost saw it again with my mom and my sister and her boyfriend. But I was occupied playing Kingdom Hearts because, like, I'm not gonna give that up. We've been
Fair.
talking about it for months, months, I says.
Yeah. It was a
Um,
good time.
oh, it's so
Had
much
a good
fun.
time. I
You
showed
were in
up.
the chat. Sizer was in the
Yeah.
chat. He's another buddy of my friend John's, Fusro Doberimi. If you wanted to follow him, uh, yeah, that was a good time. But
There you
for Spoodermain, for for the webhead himself, No Way Home is starting to set some records, and by starting, I mean
go. Yeah.
come and gone and continuing to set.
Oh yeah.
It's I mean it's easily the biggest movie of 2021, like a nice little end cap of the year, and still
Absolutely.
continuing to rake it in. It is the highest grossing Spider-Man movie, even accounting for inflation. So the original 2002 Spider-Man, the Tobey Maguire, the one that set it all up, uh,
Pizza time.
really like Pizza Time. That's the second one. Like the first one, like killed it. The second one is still really popular as well, but that
Very.
first one, accounting for inflation, um, it was originally 403 million plus, was its lifetime gross. Um, Accounting for inflation, that brought it up to like $623 million for that original Spider-Man, which back in 2002, I mean,
Uh,
movie going was a much different thing than it is now. Like you didn't have
for
the
a
bigger
superhero movie.
blockbusters. Yeah, you didn't get a lot of, I would say, a lot of sequels and interconnectivity, and like they were just starting to make some
Yeah.
superhero films that actually hit the ground. Like I think the first X-Men came out a little bit before Spider-Man did, and it had a very different
Movie.
tone to say the least.
Yeah.
Um, but that first Spider-Man movie really was kind of the trendsetter and kicked off
Oh yeah.
the 2000s era of
Catalyst.
superhero
Yeah.
films.
Oh.
But after that, the next one was Far From Home, which makes sense. It was the movie that came out after Avengers Endgame, and that was in and of
Yeah.
itself, 390 million. It's up there. No Way Home, it's still in theaters. I mean, goodness, this thing has been out for less than a month, and it's at 635. So it's already past the original Spider-Man. When you account for that inflation of
Oh yeah.
20 years.
But I mean, look
um,
at this. Look at this cast. Like, oh my God, you
it's
have
rock
all the
stars,
Spider-Mans.
all
Willem
the stuff.
Dafoe's back. Alfred Molina, the guy who played Doc Ock in the
Yep,
original, in
all
the
of those guys
Tobey
from
Maguire. Like,
Spider-Man
oh
One. You've got
yeah.
the Lizard and Electro
Jamie
from
Foxx
Spider-Man
finally
Two.
gets to be, yeah, but
Jamie
it's
Foxx
like
just gets
a
to be
better
cool.
Electro. Yeah,
Yeah,
they rebooted it. Thank God.
yeah.
I'm so happy for him.
I
I
like
like to see him in Marvel
there's
stuff. I
there's a
want him
small
to get that
line of
paycheck.
yeah there's a small line of dialogue where he's like, the energy's different here. It's yellow. Like, I'm glad that they acknowledge, like,
Yellow.
hey, I had a
So
costume
fun.
design change.
Right?
Here's the reason. Oh,
They
it's
just
just
they
different.
just went for it. I love
Yeah.
that so much. They're just
Um,
like, nope, we're doing it.
yeah, so
We're
that
gonna
was the
make this the
thing.
Smash Brothers of Spider-Man movies.
So that's how Spider-Man's been kind of comparing amongst itself. Now, in the grander scheme, like Spider-Man No Way Home it's fighting Age of Ultron. Some places say that it's beaten Age of Ultron, some say it's just underneath but still going. For the fifth slash fourth highest grossing superhero film. The next three above that are the original Avengers, which is not far off,
Yeah.
as well as Infinity War, which that's a big mark, and Endgame, of course, where you're fighting for uh most bought, most tickets sold, etc. Like of all time. When you start competing with the Avatar Blue People movie, um, that's
Yeah.
that's like earth
You're getting
shattering.
you're getting into it.
Yeah, yeah,
James Cameron is a high bar.
yeah. Oh yeah. Especially with that, because we had all of the hype of, whoa, 3D movies are like cool and not red and blue anymore, like they were back in the day.
Yeah.
Like Shark Boy and Lava Girl
I
type stuff.
don't know though, but like I feel like a lot of the real 3D stuff, really honestly, I'm not that into it.
Yeah.
Like I
I,
rarely feel the need to go pay for it.
no, what I do like though, which also happened around the same time, was IMAX. And so just the
Yes.
bigger screen, the full rumble.
Yes.
Theaters
Yes.
were starting to become like recliners, and they'll
Yes.
shake your seats and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
The heavy immersion
Yeah,
theaters or whatever the hell they're called.
real in depth. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's where Spider-Man
I have
is.
definite yeah.
Uh, go ahead, go ahead.
I have definitely paid to go see a 3D movie that I didn't care was in 3D just because it was in the IMAX.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Um, so after that, we get into what the highest worldwide grossing things are. Now, Spider-Man is still climbing the list. We talked about the original Avengers. We talked about Infinity War and Endgame. Spider-Man was in 12th place last I saw. Now, this is where some of the discrepancy comes in between Age of Ultron, the second Avengers movie, and excuse me, No Way Home. The uh, the two of them are in that 11th and 12th spot, but No Way Home is still climbing. Above that is Frozen 2, which I didn't realize the second Frozen did better than the first one,
Really?
and I
Yeah,
didn't
I still
really.
haven't even seen that.
I haven't seen it either, so that surprises me
Yeah.
that it's as high up as it was and how people received it because
Yeah.
I've heard mixed
Guess I'll have
opinions
to get
on
on
that.
that.
Yeah, the first one
I
people
just
liked. It
yeah. Oh
exploded
yeah, did they?
unexpectedly. Like,
Virality really helped with
oh
Let It
man.
Go.
Oh my
That was a
gosh, yeah.
big
I think that one
turning
song
point.
carries the entirety of that film. Like
Um, I
there's
like
a
the
lot
movie a
of it
lot.
is self sustaining. Like Love is
Yeah.
an Open Door, Do You Want to Build a Snowman? Like those are good
Oh
songs,
yeah.
and I don't think it detracts. I think it elevates the film, but Let It Go
Totally.
just shot
Oh,
it above all.
it's it's like in a like Moulin Rouge to me. That's not one of my favorite movies ever, but like when I watch it, I always at least have to watch to the cover of Roxanne because it's like
Oh, yes.
that's the point of that movie
It's
for
so
me.
like
And
tense. The
yeah, and
strings. El
yeah,
Tango
and
de
as funny
Roxanne.
as Like a Virgin is, like that song just hits hard. And it's the
Yeah.
same thing for Let It Go. It's just and the lady who sings it, she was the original Wicked Witch of the West from the
Yep.
Wicked
Yep.
on
Adia
Broadway, and
Menzel.
she is
She's been in the business a while. She's in
amazing.
for
Just
going
oh
to like the early 2000s stuff. I believe she's in Rent as well. Like she's been
yeah,
around doing musicals
oh yeah.
for a
Her
while.
voice is just something else, and she can dance. She is a really good triple threat. Like oh,
Yep. Uh quoting the infamous John Travolta, Adele Dazeem is up there. God,
very fair.
what an old meme that was. So after Frozen 2, you get the Avengers. Of course, that's $1.5 million, like or sorry, billion with a B. Uh, After that, you get Fast and the Furious 7, which I feel like a lot of that.
Wow.
I think that is carried on the fact that it has a lot to do with the death of I almost said Jake Paul. That's not it.
Oh, Paul Ryan.
Paul Ryan. There it is. Yeah. Because
Or
that
wait,
was
Paul Ryan? No,
Paul Walker.
Paul Walker. Paul Walker.
Is it Walker?
One second.
I don't
Yeah,
pay enough
Paul Walker.
attention to the Fast and
Paul
Furious
Walker.
movies.
I
Okay,
don't
Paul
know where I
Walker.
got Paul Ryan from.
Yeah. I also think that that movie is carried by the song at the end of it because you have Charlie Puth's "See You Again." Whoa.
Yeah,
Um,
they have that scene where
and the
they had
power
his
of music.
brother in there.
Yep. Yep. And
They had his
then
superpower. Yeah, that was good.
after that, surprisingly, I didn't know this. The 3D version of The Lion King, which people shat on, they were not very happy with that one. Um,
New.
yeah. Apparently 1.6
Hard to beat.
billion dollars though. I think
Oh
the
yeah, I mean it's Disney.
yeah, I want to say that the casting was really good for some of the roles. Like you had Donald Glover, Childish Gambino, whatever other name
Yeah.
he's going by these days. I don't know if there's another one besides those two.
Yeah,
Um,
I think it's
and then you had what John Oliver as Zazu. That's
yeah,
brilliant idea. Pumbaa
so good.
is Seth Rogen. Genius. Whoever decided that, you're off.
Yeah,
Like
what else are you gonna do, right?
yeah, tons of stuff that was going for it, and then I think a lot of what took it away was the art direction, at least for how people
Yeah,
felt about it. visually stunning, but
Oh yeah.
not.
I actually didn't mind it at all personally, but it wasn't like as awe-inspiring as it was when I was a kid.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, why remake a masterpiece?
yeah,
It,
it's the Lion King, right? Like, it's
yeah,
pretty hard
I,
to. You can throw all the money in the world you want at it, but that was a
exactly, exactly.
cultural touchstone for a long time.
Yep. After that's Jurassic World. I didn't think it did as well. Um, that's also in the $1.6 billion range.
Hmm.
Yeah, interesting. And then you get
Mm,
into the Avengers stuff. So Avengers Infinity War, Star Wars Episode 7, Titanic's still up there. It's number 3 in the old time rankings. Avengers
yeah.
Endgame. And then of course, the winner, much to Disney's chagrin, to their disappointment, Avatar. Back in 2009. Man, that was
Hard
a
to be
while
James
ago.
Cameron, man.
Yeah, it's weird to think that it came out in the early 2000s. Like it wasn't even
Yeah.
2010 on. Weird.
Yeah.
Um,
I was in middle school.
yeah. But on the subject of the different Spider-Man movies, uh, going through like the list of the Spider-Man movies, something that I was surprised by. I thought it did better than that, but it's still really, really solid. Was Into the Spider-Verse, which I'm really excited
Yeah,
for the sequel. Um, I have
very.
no idea how to how I want to describe the titling of the sequel because it's kind of uh, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse 2 Across the Spider-Verse Part 1.
Yeah, it's
Like,
it's gonna be something. Oh,
that's funny.
I do love how they have to like work that so hard into
I
titles
know.
now. Like, okay, this is part one of a sequel,
Yeah, here
but
we
there will be
go.
another. But
Yeah.
it's not like a trilogy. Like these are two together.
No,
Same story.
absolutely. So that was entertaining. In terms of like how it did, it's just shy of Amazing Spider-Man 2, which is weird to think about because going by like all of the different movies, Amazing Spider-Man 2 was a disappointment, but it still did financially better than Into the Spider-Verse.
It's
And into
Spider-Man, man.
yeah, like
Yeah,
it was still good. It just wasn't all that critically acclaimed. Like it's
yeah,
surprising that they decided against an Amazing Spider-Man 3, especially with how the latest Spider-Man is referencing all these other Spider-Man movies and is just soaring with it. Um
yeah.
so that was something that surprised me, but I'm very excited for the new Into the Spider-Verse movie.
It's
I
kind of
think
the curse of animated movies. For some reason,
that's
I don't know
true.
why people aren't as receptive.
Not yet.
Like,
Not yet. It's the older generation, I'm convinced. My
yeah,
mom and my grandma, they'll refuse to watch movies or shows simply on the basis that they're animated. I'm like, you guys grew up in the Disney Renaissance. I don't understand
why?
how you can just immediately shit on an animated picture because it's animated. You
Yeah,
watched Disney movies in the 90s and
yeah.
before. Like, what,
Like,
Little Mermaid is like 87 or something like that?
yeah,
1987? Like, what?
it's
Who?
crazy.
Huh? So,
Yeah, it's just like, yeah,
and it just
I
looks
don't
better
understand
and
it.
better now. I don't get
Yeah,
it. I don't
it
know.
looks so amazing. Oh, the
Hmm.
art direction of those movies, like, just it was
Man.
mind blowing, honestly, to watch that movie. Like, they went so hard on the animation
Yep.
and like doing everything they could with it.
Yeah. And I will
Like,
say that I did manage to like strong arm them into watching Into the Spider-Verse because I'm like, it's
yeah,
Spider-Man. Like, I think that was the selling point of like, hey, it's
yeah,
another Spider-Man movie and it references the other Spider-Man movies. Like, I can't give you any more buy-in than it being a Disney
yeah.
musical. Like, come on now.
Come on,
So that was something that was entertaining, and I will say it
nice.
feels like Sony has learned a lot of the lessons of Into the Spider-Verse with just being more out there with what an animated movie is like.
Well, and
Um,
they've been good about like I'm glad we got away from Peter Parker's origin for five
that's true.
seconds. Oh my God,
we got a
we got
different
it.
origin. We didn't have
Yeah,
the Uncle Ben death. It was the other
exactly.
Spider-Man death, which
Yes.
is that's how it goes down in the Ultimate Spider-Man comics, if I recall
Yep.
correctly. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
Miles Morales was very much positioned for a long time as Peter Parker's replacement,
yep,
and still is
absolutely.
very popular in it.
Yeah.
He was one of the first big ones that like stuck really well too. Because I know Ghost Rider does it a lot as well, but
Where
you
they
know.
remix the origin a little bit.
They just have other people in the role. So like there's obviously like Nick Cage played Johnny Blaze. I think but if you
Mm,
watch like the Ghost Rider from current Marvel, like from like the Marvel shows, I can't remember which one he
yeah.
was on.
He
Um, that's a different Ghost Rider because he like drives
it's
a car around, and I
yeah,
haven't read all the Ghost Rider stuff.
it's
It's like
the
Eddie something,
Hispanic
I want to
one.
say. Yeah,
I forget his name. He was in Agents of Shield. That was a while ago, but
yeah,
that was really fun too. Like
and
seeing
that is
that
like
version.
yeah,
And
and that's one that there's multiple.
they referenced the other Ghost Rider because
Yeah, Johnny
um
Blaze.
yeah, because I think Johnny Blaze goes up to him when that all happens, when he becomes Ghost Rider, if
Yeah,
I remember
he's
the
like
show correctly.
his kind of mentor
Yeah. Um
because Johnny had that too from the other writer before him. That's
yeah,
the
exactly.
kind of
They
the
I
chain
think
of
it's all
events.
implied stuff because, they didn't
Yeah,
have Johnny Blaze in the show itself, but
yeah.
um yeah,
Dang,
same.
Nicolas Cage.
Could you imagine if they got Nick Cage in as Ghost Rider in the
I can't
MCU?
imagine he would have said no. Like, I really wonder if he would.
He
You know
has
what I
weird
mean?
monetary issues. Like
Yeah.
he there's
I
there's
mean, he
another
was in that
podcast
weird.
that's really fun, Cox and Crendor. They literally go through a list of things that he's bought, and he's like gotten a dinosaur
Yeah.
skull, like stuff like
It's like,
that. I mean,
dude,
it's Nick Cage. The man stole the Declaration of Independence. Of course, he has weird spending problems.
I'm Nick Cage. What
Yeah,
you gonna do?
but yeah. So with going back to Into the Spider Verse, I think Sony's really kept a lot of the lessons of that where they could be a little bit more against the grain. Their more recent movie that I saw was The Mitchells versus the Machines. It's on Netflix. It's animated. It's mostly 3D animated. It's got its own kind of styling to it, and I want to say it's kind of cel shaded a little bit, but more importantly, a lot of the like 2D overlapping on the 3D that you had in Into the Spider Verse, where that one was a little bit more comic booky.
Yeah.
They took parts of that without it being necessarily comic book to elevate the emotions, the feelings, the expressions of the different characters. They make parts a little bit more zany with it. I mean, it was fantastic. That's such a good movie. Highly recommend it. Like, and funny as hell. I
Well,
haven't laughed that hard in a while. Like I was properly chuckling. Not even the like full on just okay, hold on, I need to pause that, rewind, go back. That was fantastic. Um yeah, that was a really good one. I don't know what other like recent against the grain movies I can think of. Uh you had one that
oh,
you were talking about.
well, just the other day actually, and I didn't know about this movie. I didn't even know this movie existed. It came out in 2021.
Mhm.
Uh, and I am a big fan of it's called Bad Trip. It's a Eric Andre movie. It's
Yeah.
also produced by Jeff Tremaine, who did the Jackass movies.
Yep.
So this is not something to watch with your parents, or no one is telling you to watch this right now because it gets places, but it is incredibly funny. Um, it's cool because it's kind of shot in the guerrilla style where like it's real people and then Eric Andre is just playing a character,
Mhm.
but there is an actual storyline to the movie and he has a buddy that they go on a road trip with and it's just kind of their misadventures. But a lot of the scenes are candid shot things like where there are real people reacting. Like they'll have like a food truck to kind of like get
Yeah.
people around and then
It's
they'll do something.
it's much more Borat-esque where it's real people in
Yeah.
real situations. It's just it happens to be the actors that are
And
causing the chaos of it.
and there are scenes for like just the movie like where it's just them in the car, like there are actual like like cut together stuff, so it's kind of fun, like there's a framing device to it all.
Yeah.
It's really cool. But I was just like I was impressed to see people were seemed really cool about the whole thing, like they have all the reactions at the end
Mhm.
and everybody was like there were like people Eric Andre said this at like in an interview afterwards and he's like what's the and the interviewer asked him like what's one thing you really feel about this movie as far as like all the people in it and he's like we really are united and we are united. That's what he really said. And I don't
Yeah.
know if he was just kidding around or what, but there were some really cool things. Like there were people who like he was arguing there's an argument between them at one point and this guy is like separating them and sitting them down like you guys need to talk this out. Stop. Like what are you doing? You're being ridiculous. and like Eric Andre's like, "You're such a hero, dude. Like you're like out here trying to keep," and it was just like,
Just
it was
keeping the
impressive.
peace with it.
Yeah, like some people were doing some like really like stand up things. Like you'd think people would like run off in that situation, but a lot of
Yeah,
people are sticking to it.
it
And
wasn't what I would say traditional psychology would say there's the bystander effect where something's going wrong
yeah,
and you just ignore it and keep going unless you're called out. But people were stepping up to the plate,
yeah. And you certainly see the bystander effect, but
of
there
course.
are a concentrated amount of people who are like always getting in and helping out and trying to, yeah. And it he wasn't making fun of people. That was an
Yeah.
interesting thing. Like his character was the one getting made fun of a lot of the time,
Okay.
but like the people were just kind of there for the reactions. And
Yeah.
I thought it was
Very.
really nice.
I would say that's definitely more Borat esque, where
Yeah,
it's the fictional character of Borat,
totally. Yeah.
and everyone's just like,
But
"What the hell is this guy?"
but it honestly, it was a movie made with a lot of really good spirit, and that was just kind of funny. It wasn't just a pee pee poo poo piss piss jokes.
Yeah.
Which, not that Eric Andre is ever just that.
No,
It-
that's
there's a
true.
lot of that.
He's very. I think he's got a good level of satirical about him,
He
to
knows
put it lightly.
exactly how far to take. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah,
He's found his balance with it a lot of the time. Um,
it is very raunchy though. Like, do not watch it with your parents unless they're
yeah.
really cool. Like, it goes places.
No, that makes sense.
Um,
Well, following that, we'll loop back to the Spider-Man discussion. So, with this next bit, we're going to talk a little bit more about the storytelling in the Spider-Man Far From Home, or sorry, No Way Home movie that just came out, the brand new one. There will be spoilers, so little asterisk here. If you haven't seen the movie and you care about spoilers, feel free to just like stop right here. Literally after this, it's just our like closure. Check out our other YouTube channels. I'm playing Kingdom Hearts. He's got Five String Connor as well. Like, this is the point where you want to just like close out. But if you have seen the movie or you don't care about spoilers, I am one that doesn't care about spoilers. I'm one of those weird people that will hunt down spoilers because I like them. I like seeing a little bit of the movie, like, or knowing what I'm exactly getting into so I can pay attention to more of the filmmaking aspects when I go to see it proper. That's something that uh, if you're in that territory or you've seen it, feel free, keep listening. But talking about Spider-Man No Way Home, there there's a lot of really cool things that they approached with it. And one of the things that we wanted to talk on was the kind of interconnectivity. Now, naturally, this is like probably the lightest spoiler. It connects very heavily to the other Spider-Man movies. The villains are directly shown into the trailers, but more importantly, and this is the part that I think has really caught fire and has gone all over the place, is you get Andrew Garfield Spider-Man from the Amazing Spider-Man series, and you get Tobey Maguire from the original Spider-Man series, which they are now calling those respective Spider-Mans the Amazing Spider-Man, and for Tobey Maguire, the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man.
hmm.
Now, with those, it's I think it's kind of a blessing and a curse when you work with connected storytelling. I think that a lot of it is really awesome with how they handled it. It could have been a lot more tongue in cheek, or more I guess this is our Spider-Man now. Just like we're throwing this in, it's just for the cameo, the shock factor of, oh
Yeah,
hey, that's the person, that's the person. I think that's a lot of what Star Wars has kind of struggled um, with the sequel trilogy, is they kind of throw it in, especially with Rise of Skywalker. It's there for the, oh, I recognize that, or oh yeah, oh of course, you
yeah,
get the Force theme everywhere. No Way Home doesn't do that. No Way Home is very like respectful and acknowledging of the different pieces of the previous movies. And what I'm not sure of is how well does it translate if you don't know that additional context? Is that something that everyone's expected to like just get on board for? Personally,
yeah.
I mean, I've seen all of those, and I liked it quite a lot. I do think there's some things that could be better with that interconnectivity, but uh, overall, I think it was done very respectfully, and it was done in a very narratively satisfying way. I just want to
Yeah.
like get even more out of that. Like this is one of the few films where I'm like, dude, a 3 hour cut, I think would benefit the
Mm,
film quite heavily.
a nice director's cut.
Yeah, yeah. Or if there were additional scenes that were filmed for added context. I know there's a channel I follow. I want to say it's Nando V Movies, where he does like film reviews and the like, where he talks about there being a scene where we just needed to see like the villains gather one more time to like get on board to go attack the Spider Men.
Yeah, like
Um,
showing them actually being like, but together.
yeah, like just that one like uh if the chaos that unfolds in the apartment, if that's like the small stone that starts the avalanche, we didn't really see that avalanche getting the ball rolling. If
Yeah,
we had that
it just
one
kind
scene
of
where,
happened.
yeah,
We're
if
like,
we
oh,
just had that one scene like in an alleyway where Green Goblin talks to Sandman with Electro and Lizard and all of that. Basically, I'm kind of thinking of the Venom scene where he goes and talks to Sandman in Spider-Man 3. Like if we had that but with all of these other guys, I
they
think that's just enough to like make that finale that much more impactful. Like that's
they
probably the only
totally could
scene
have
I'd
referenced
add.
the musical too. Just had
Oh
the
yeah,
Green Goblin
the Spider-Man
be
music.
like, we're
That'd be
all
funny.
freaks, just like me,
That'd be
and we
kind of
need
funny.
company.
Yeah, that would be one of those real niche
Oh,
references.
yeah, that would
so,
be great.
um, so that's one thing that's really the only scene I think I would properly add if you were keeping the same absolute plot of what you had. Everything else are smaller changes in like how the dialogue works. So, um, yeah, that's that's
I
some of
would
the
like
ideas.
to.
Yeah.
This is a slightly petty thing, and I don't know if it's totally wrapped into story about it. Is MJ in this movie? I now obviously like you can cast whoever you want as MJ. Like that's
Mhm.
totally fine. Like Mary Jane doesn't have to look exactly shit in the comics. That's great.
Yeah.
But Jesus, all the marketing and like the Fortnite stuff, it is really weird to see Spider-Man standing next to just normal girl.
Oh,
Like I know
for
Mary Jane doesn't really have a costume, but I'm just like,
yeah.
man, this is like kind of odd. I can't lie.
Yeah, and MJ in No Way Home is Michelle Jones compared to Mary
Yeah,
Jane, which
fair.
like that's a weird like
Yeah,
tweak thing that separates the universes as well. Um, yeah, she doesn't have, I would say, a very inspired costume design thing going. Same thing goes for Ned. Some people have said they're
yeah,
setting Ned up to be a hobgoblin uh later down the line with the color scheming and the hood he was wearing in this movie. That was interesting. That was something that I didn't pick up on, but to be fair, I'm not the most in tune with comics and stuff, but um I'm very curious to see how that pans out if
totally.
when they do more
Yeah,
Spider-Man stuff, to be honest. And it feels like now is the full departure of, all right, you have now vacated most of the MCU stuff. This is now going to be Sony Spider-Man things.
yeah,
And we might still have a little bit of the interconnectivity with the MCU. I don't know how much Kevin Feige is going back and forth with them for that kind
yeah.
of thing. um, I think it would be pretty cool, and I think it would
Nice.
speak to the good faith between the two studios and what they've been doing. But we'll see if that's something they follow through on. I hope they do because I think it would work better if they do what they've done in this movie, where everything has been in good faith, acknowledging, paying respects where respects are due to what came before, for better or for worse. Like some of the like a lot of the feedback from Amazing Spider-Man 2 was, this is a terrible movie. It was poorly paced, which to be fair, it's pretty
Yeah,
rough. It does have some issues, but they still paid its respects to it. And now people are demanding an Amazing Spider-Man 3, which Andrew Garfield is on board for, to say the
oh
least.
yeah.
So that could be interesting.
It, they really managed to flip the script on that movie.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
gone from like
Full
one of the
180.
biggest like flops to now that. But it's so funny as soon as you introduce like multiple dimensionalities and all that. Like people are
Mhm.
all of a sudden so on board with something that they're also vehemently against before.
Yeah,
And
I
like
think
I
it.
didn't like that movie either.
Yeah, I think
Like
it
I could
really.
honestly, I
I
love
think.
Andrew Garfield though.
Yeah, I think it really shows what a good movie can do to the lot. Like you can have a bad film and you'll still have enough audience forgiveness, I guess, or suspension of belief
Yeah,
or what have
you
you.
can get them back.
You can get them
It's
back.
not it's not the end of it,
Yeah,
which is interesting.
yeah.
It's an
Which,
interesting way to take use of something that wasn't really all that
yeah, which
wanted, I
that
guess.
like a thought that occurs to me is that something that you think you could get like the Game of Thrones people back as another example? How they would do it, no idea. But with how season 8 left off and then we never got any follow up or
Uh,
addressing or anything like that, I think that's something where Game of Thrones is just completely dropped from the public consciousness. Like everyone talked Game of Thrones. It was gearing up to be like the new Lord of the Rings type thing where it's just
yeah.
everywhere and it's permanently there. And then season 8 and then no one
Yep.
acknowledges it anymore. Like it's gone. Not even like
Yeah. And
references.
I feel like a lot of the people who I know who like actually read and stuff too, a lot of them have been reading like other fantasy or like sci-fi stuff. I've been hearing a lot about different series from here or there.
Yeah.
Like it was weird to not hear about Game of Thrones as a book from them,
Yeah.
but they
Yeah.
seem to have kind of moved on as well, which is
Hmm.
interesting.
For was it Song of Ice
Not
and
that they
Fire?
won't read it when it, yeah, not that they won't read the new book if it ever comes out, but
It's not like one of their first recommended things anymore.
yeah, like it used to be that was all they read. Now they're reading like lots of other stuff too, which is like kind of like a interesting
Yeah.
how things
Um,
change.
well, following that, to dive more into the core of Spider-Man, because I feel like this is the first MCU Spider-Man that feels like a Spider-Man movie, and the reason I say that is it has a little bit more of a moral weight to it than a lot of the other films had. And to me, walking out of the movie, I think the real theme of it was about providing second chances. I mean, Peter is actively hunting down both his own second chance and, more importantly, to give his friends, his family, their second chances because everyone's applying for colleges and they don't end up going into MIT or any of the other colleges they apply for because of the controversy of being connected
Yeah,
to Peter Parker and Spider-Man. And that's something that he's like, this is undeserved for all of them. And that's what kicks this whole story into gear. And when the villains show up and he realizes when they go back home, they're destined to die in their respective universes, that he gives them that second chance. And honestly, it kind of gives the other Spider-Men their second chances as well. Because a
both flawed
huge,
series.
yeah, a
Like even the Sam Raimi,
huge.
I love Sam Raimi, but still, like doing three were a little.
Well, not just that, but it's well, Spider-Man 2 is fantastic with Doc Ock. I think
Yeah,
that's still up there as one of my
it
faves.
still has like some structural thing here or there.
Yeah.
I would say that
Um,
I didn't even like as much.
but more importantly,
Great
like if
casting though.
if you look at the whole of the Raimi trilogy, a massive weight on Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man's shoulders is the fact that he had his friend Harry that ended up completely getting severed as a relationship and a friendship because of the death of Norman Osborn. And
Yeah,
while he didn't directly kill him, you know, it's the
yeah,
it was from his own glider. That whole conversation that kind of eventually turns Harry around. It's still very much the thing that weighs him down throughout that series is that ultimate consequence for his actions. And
yeah,
in this movie, he stops Tom Holland from committing that unforgivable,
yeah.
that drastic shift by
The
killing
it's not that he
the Green
killed him, but
Goblin.
I didn't really save you
Yeah,
either.
exactly. Which is funny because that's in Batman Begins as like that line.
Yeah. And Batman is, yeah, especially early Batman is
Yep.
definitely of that kind of ilk of like, yeah, I don't really, I need to help you.
Yeah. And that's something that really weighs heavily in the Spider-Man Raimi versions. Now, after that, you have Amazing Spider-Man, which in Amazing Spider-Man 2, a big chunk of that theme was there's not enough time. Like, enjoy the time that you have or allocate your time appropriately, kind of thing. And
Well, and like the death of Gwen Stacy in the comics as well, and just
yeah,
that's a huge like marker in Spider-Man's life. Like that's
yeah,
very big.
yeah. And
So like
a huge chunk of that is he
that
can't
lasts for a
save
long time.
everybody. And in the movie, it's visually and narratively strong through line of the film. Like, if Amazing Spider-Man 2 was a little bit better, you still very much have that theme of time, and I think that could have been a really cool moral lesson to see. Uh, but when when you get into the latest Spider-Man movie, um, you see how Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, the Amazing Spider-Man, like shifts all gears directly towards making sure that uh Michelle Jones, that MJ Zendaya,
Yeah.
doesn't end up dying, and he gets a little bit
Yes.
of a redemption as well.
Yeah.
In
He can set it right a little bit.
Yeah, exactly, and that's something
And
that you didn't really get from the Amazing Spider-Man 2. Yeah,
I like how they didn't bring Gwen Stacy back somehow, because like
yep,
you could have done that really if you
yeah,
wanted to, but it's for this Spider-Man. He's helping this Spider-Man. Because
mm-hmm,
I've always liked that idea of like this from like Avatar: The Last Airbender of like the best way to solve your own problems is often to help someone else solve theirs.
yeah,
And I
very
thought that was really cool to see that kind of action going down for a Spider-Man.
absolutely. It's a pay it forward, which again it ties
Yeah,
into kind of the moral I would say togetherness of the movie is,
but it still keeps it as like your past mistakes are still there. Like you still did that, but
yep,
you know what
yeah,
I mean?
there's
Like
still
it
consequences
didn't
to what you've
rewrite
gone
anything.
through.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I like that.
Now, for this movie, if the theme is give people second chances, and that's pretty strong across the board. It's Peter giving his friends and family second chances, kind of looking for his own, but mostly for other people. Him providing the villain second chances. You get the other Spider-Man having their own second chances as far as
Yeah.
their narrative arcs, which is just again that chef's kiss. It could
Well,
have just been a simple cameo. They tied it in with the grander storytelling. If that's the theme, I would say the counter theme is uh, very much what MJ's philosophy is, and that is if you expect disappointment, you'll never be disappointed. Because the entirety of looking to give a second chance is the optimism that somebody will be better.
yeah,
And
this will
with
be the time.
yeah, and with MJ expecting disappointment and never being disappointment, that's the pessimistic view of world. And uh, I think that that could have been made more of a stronger theme and anti-theme in the movie when looking at the Green Goblin. Now, this is where like the film as a whole, I think is still absolutely fantastic and it very much works narratively. But I think in terms of looking at it thematically, I think that the Green Goblin could have punctuated the the unwillingness to look at second chances thing a little bit more because you do get a little bit of the
In
well,
the
I don't want to
foil
be
to that, where
cured.
he's like, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, like Green Goblin's whole thing is like, no, I have the power to take what I want. He doesn't want to be
yeah,
cured. And Electro is very much in that same camp. He's like, no, I'm like way cooler now that I'm,
yeah.
electric.
I have freaking superpowers.
Yeah, like I'm awesome. People notice me now. That was his whole thing. He doesn't want to be cured. Sandman doesn't necessarily want to be cured per se. His whole thing is about his daughter, which is why I think
Yeah,
a scene in an alleyway would still work really well for Sandman. Just to reconnect the dots and reestablish that with them. Um, but with Green Goblin, the reason that I think he could have worked as the primary villain of the movie, because I do think he is.
even if just the
Um,
primary foil, right?
yeah,
Like the
yeah, if he's the primary foil and the primary antagonist of the movie, that causes all of the chaos and
yeah,
destruction, um, I think that the way they could have made him more poignantly uh, a threat to the theme of give everyone a second chance and make it a little bit more narratively cohesive with the original Green Goblin from the Raimi trilogy is if you had this is going to sound weird if you had more of a callback to how he was in the Raimi trilogy because the Green Goblin in those movies is a manipulative bitch. Like he
Oh
plans
yeah.
out like, no, here's how we destroy Spider-Man. We attack his heart. I wish that we got that exact same thing because this is a Green Goblin that hasn't failed. He is winning, he is beating up the Tobey Maguire
Yeah.
Spider-Man. He's had multiple times where I mean, he knocks the dude out in a burning building presumably caused by him dressed as a grandma. Like this is
Yeah.
a this
Like
is a Green Goblin that has planned a couple of steps ahead while still being like an anarchist, chaotic force of nature.
yeah.
And I think if we had uh, more of a forethought and planning with it, where he, and to be fair, there is a little bit of a duality of man question between him and Norman as far as like who's in control at what points type of thing.
Yeah.
I
Or is it
still,
really the goblin or is it just Norman
yeah,
being
I think being a little bit
using an
more
excuse?
expressly, this is the Goblin conducting a plan, and then he just uses Norman mode as an agent to get to where he needs to be.
Yeah.
I
The
think,
blend in.
yeah, I think that that is a scene or a couple of lines of dialogue that would be really important and really further emphasizes Tom Holland's uh, Peter Parker and Spider-Man journey of no, I'm still doubling down on giving him a second chance. And I
Yeah.
think by like actively planning the death of Aunt May, because everyone knows Aunt May and Spider-Man and Peter Parker, he's the most famous
Yeah.
person in this universe. I think that would have been just that much more of a pointed emphasis on just what kind of evil and cruelty this Green Goblin is that Tom Holland hasn't really faced before, where it's I am evil for evil's sake kind of thing.
Yeah. It's
Because
like
even
no, they
Thanos
don't
has his
change
own like defense argument
morality.
structure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you get Endgame Thanos who was like, I'm just gonna shred everything. Like he just flips on a dime from balance, screw it, I'm starting over. You guys tried balance and it didn't work, so haha. Like that's that's like the worst of evil stuff, and it's not even directly connected to Peter Parker's morality. And that's what I think would be really, really cool to see. And I think that would have made the scene where Toby Spider-Man stopping the piercing of the glider would have
Yeah.
just emphasized that point that much more. I think that's my one real change about it besides maybe and this goes to like a few lines of dialogue here or there. I don't think Doc Ock's line about I what have you done with my machine? I had I had Spider-Man by the throat and then I was
Yeah.
here. Um I think that specific dialogue could have been better because it implies that when Doc Ock goes back, even though he's cured, which in Spider-Man 2 he overcomes
Yeah. The
the
arms.
mechanical problem, yeah, by just sheer force of will and
Yeah.
destroys the machine. It's at a point where the machine must be destroyed, so he goes through an unnecessary redemption arc, and that's kind of sucky. I think if they made it a little bit further back, so he hasn't even started that fusion reactor, or like, could you imagine seeing like you do get the power of the sun in the palm of my hand? Imagine he takes that arc reactor back to the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. That would be
Yeah.
really really cool because the whole
Oh
goal
yeah.
is that when they go back, they don't have to die. Does
Right.
Tom Holland Spider Man know that? No. Does Doc Ock know that? No. But that's the kind of thing where it's just little things to make it just that much more narratively satisfying that um
Totally.
it's easier to see in hindsight. Like again, this is not a I'm shitting on the movie. The movie is fantastic and it really does pay its respects really really well. I just think there are those moments that could have been just that
I,
much more perfect.
it's like Incredibles too. Like at the time, like I enjoyed the movie. I watched it. There were problems,
Yeah,
but there were problems, and they were obvious. But I
yeah,
couldn't have made a better one by
yeah,
any stretch at the time with nothing to go.
yeah, exactly. And especially with, the struggles of they made this during the pandemic. Like that
Uh,
already builds on top of that. Um,
totally. Jesus, I
no,
can't even
but
imagine, dude.
if I were to say one thing, this movie feels like it had a rough draft and it had like a second or a third draft. There probably could have been a fourth draft, and that's where Jordan's nitpicks of little
Yeah.
things that other people have pointed out as well.
I really
Um,
think a good director's cut would, honestly, that sounds really good to me. Like a nice
right?
long 3.5 hours, like maybe even four. Like
I
give
think
me
they could
that.
do it.
Give me the stuff.
Yeah,
Like I'd be really curious to see.
I think they absolutely could do that, and I don't know
And I'm
how
not
much
like
is
some
filmed for
fucking
that.
like release the Snyder cut guy.
No.
I like director's cuts.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, I think that's what I was thinking in terms of the themes of the movie. I guess one thing that I've heard a lot criticized is um, the web swinging, the like final swing of the movie for Tom Holland doesn't feel quite as grandiose as some of the other ones. I've I understand it. It's not my first complaint. If I were to complain about something, I think there could have been a little
Yeah,
bit
that's
more foretelling of Aunt May's death in the movie. I think that's something that could have been highlighted more because it feels slightly rug pulled out. Because everyone, as the audience, we have this is how I put it to my friend Marcus, where there's the idea as far as suspense. It's the guy that made Psycho and all
Alfred
those.
Hitchcock.
Yeah, Hitchcock. So Hitchcock
Yeah,
has this famous
the
spiel about
bomb under the
suspense.
table.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And if the audience can see the bomb under the table and they sit in that moment with the other characters in the scene, uh, they get much more tension and drama out of it. While if there are two people having a conversation and a bomb explodes from under the table, it's got this shock value, but it doesn't have a lasting suspense and impact.
the
And
reason I think we don't get much on it, and this is not a good I just think
yeah,
it is a PG-13 movie,
yeah,
and it's hard to do the now. That doesn't mean you can't do it the Hitchcock way, because you
yeah,
could absolutely still Hitchcock it, because he barely shows anything.
yeah.
You literally
Oh yeah.
see Hershey syrup get poured down a drain.
Yeah. Like
Like,
he had all sorts of film rules that he had to deal with
yeah.
for
So,
his rating.
by all means, it still could have been done and kept PG-13 easily.
Yeah. But
But I think sometimes with that, they're like, we're just gonna not touch that because I don't want to.
yeah. Well,
But I do agree. It would be nice to have more tension built in that.
yeah, and that's something that I think when Aunt May gets hit and stands back up, like it makes you think, oh, she's gonna be fine, and then it feels rug pulley. I think there should have been
Yeah.
some reaction shot or some like zooming in on her face, seeing her emotion, because she like the acting in that scene is freaking fantastic. I mean, they really nailed
Yeah.
the emotions of everything. But I think having just like one or
Absolutely.
two seconds with Aunt May and even if you had just like a shot of if it's like an external bleeding thing and she has a little bit of blood on her hand, because I know Peter has a little bit
Yeah.
on his spider suit hand. If we had
Oh
Aunt
yeah.
May like see it, notice it, and then grab Peter by the arm and just go, hey, with great power comes great responsibility. Like that's the reveal for the audience that, oh yeah, she's gonna
Yeah.
die. I think if we sat in that a little bit longer, it would have made the emotional impact just that much more strong. Um, Similarly, like ironically, going the other direction, uh, Amazing Spider-Man 2, I think Gwen Stacy's death scene is played out really well. My critique of that is I think it goes too far into the like foreshadowing dramatic side of it because of the spider web hand. I think that's the one thing where I'm
Yeah.
like, all right, that's a little bit much.
Yeah.
But the rest of it where like you see uh Emma Stone like having that like gasp of, "Uh oh, I'm in trouble." You see
Yeah.
the slow mo of Andrew Garfield, seeing her in the reflection of the eye, like the cinematography of that scene is really fantastic. Having gone through to watch it
Yeah.
again after this movie, and having all of those reaction shots, zooming through all of the struggle to try to save Emma Stone's Gwen Stacy before Gwen Stacy finally clack smacks into the ground, um, slash has a lot of whiplash. It's still
Yeah.
really hard to tell, and I think that's where like the graphic nature
In
of it, like still
yeah.
being PG-13, is cemented. Um, that's something that I think No Way Home could have benefited from, is taking a little bit more of that level of emotional intensity. Especially if you paired it with
This one
Green
definitely
Goblin
felt a
planning it
lot
out.
more like pulpy.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
it was a lot. Yeah, it was a little more whimsical, I would even say.
yeah. That's fair. That's a good way to put
It
it.
was definitely not the most gritty of the Spider-Man movies for
No,
what it
no,
was,
and that's something that I think you can still
which is
maintain
cool
the whimsical nature of
in a
it.
lot of
Like
ways.
I think the clock tower scene with Gwen Stacy is
No, yeah,
very
you can
whimsical,
absolutely still do it,
and then
but it was
that one
still,
ends with the gritty.
yeah,
Yeah, I think
totally.
those elements, while still maintaining the whimsical nature, I think that's something that they could have done with
It,
No Way
not
Home.
even like to the like they can do whatever they want with like the tone or whatever, but
Yeah,
like that was just one thing in the movie in general. Is it was just very
elevated.
bouncy and yeah, everything was very like hyper esque.
Yeah. Um. So some last thoughts of what worked, what didn't work. Uh, I overall like 10 out of 10. That movie's fantastic. Love it. If you take all of my criticisms, you could say 9 out of 10 for all these what ifs, but as it stands, fantastic film. Um and then I guess the other thing in terms of like connectivity to things, and this is where I think a longer cut would benefit the movie if you were to start extending things, uh, Matt Murdock's presence, because we get the Netflix Daredevil to show up in the film. They finally acknowledge it in the MCU. I think that they could have done a little bit more to establish who this guy is, what this character is. If you hadn't seen all of the Netflix Daredevil stuff, it's a similar thing of uh, that conversation of suspense. The audience has the knowledge of what's going on. If you don't have that knowledge, you don't get any payback for seeing Charlie Cox return as Matthew Murdock.
I like that personally though. I like that you have to have gone and watched this thing, and this little bit is like if you didn't watch, you're on the outs. You gotta go watch, buddy. I enjoy little things like that. Like in the Warcraft movie, it's like that a lot of people criticize that for being made for the fans, but it's like,
Yeah,
thank you. I
I
appreciated
guess
that. It was like, you actually have to like know what you're talking for that kind of thing.
here's another way to put it. I think
I'm not into the
um,
whole like everybody needs to be included. Like, no, if you didn't
no,
watch
that's
it, you don't
fair.
know.
I just think the inclusion could have been made better for this film's setup. Like if the act one is Peter dealing with the consequences of the last film, I think you could have seen like Matt Murdock doing lawyer stuff, and that's where I think it would have made it a little bit more
I
narratively
think that's a
connected to
hard
the
sell.
movie. It is a hard
Like
sell.
realistically, like I don't think movie execs want to see Daredevil from the Daredevil series.
Yeah,
They want Spider-Man.
yeah, and that's
You're
something where
fighting. Yeah.
I think
Like,
either having him at the police station, if you have a montage of him next to Spidey, like in news clippings or something, like you could have used J. Jonah Jameson's news report, like
oh, the
showing
Daily
them like
Bugle.
walking out the courthouse, like showing
Yeah.
that he was there through the entire lawyering process. I think that would have better established, like, oh no, he's involved in this story. I think that's something that a
Yeah.
longer cut could have benefited from, because I think where
I'm
end
certainly down for it.
yeah,
I think it's a hard sell to get that to actually happen.
yeah, and
I
that's
don't
where I
think
think
execs want Daredevil.
it becomes a, this is more, you're stretching it into an end game type thing or director's cut, where I think with Endgame it was very clearly act 1, act 2, act 3. Act 1 is all right, Infinity War sucked, this is really bad for our heroes, we're in a tough spot. Act 2, time travel heist movie. Let's go. Act 3, the finale, the emotional climax, the all right, it all comes together here. I think that's something that if they did something where it was a little bit more cleanly cut between those things for this Spider-Man movie, Act 1 being, oh my gosh, this is really bad. Like things are not going well for Peter Parker. Like everything's falling apart. Getting more of that and having Matt Murdock be a piece of that puzzle because it's just more of that. Act 2 is the uh he is now dealing with the consequences of doing this wish spell. He starts the wish, suddenly there's villains all over the place. He has uh his fight with Doctor Strange about no, like we need to help these people, and Act 3 being he does help the villains. You get Aunt May's death as being like the roller coaster last apex to the final fall of the ride, and then you get the full Andrew Garfield and the like. That's where I think those.
I think you're the one person I know who's this into Daredevil. I'm impressed. Like it's fun. It's kind of fun to see. Like you're like the one person who's like, I need more Daredevil and Matt Murdock. That's what I need. It's
Well,
nice to
it's
hear that. Like usually, like that's just like such a like people couldn't even care less.
yeah.
It's fun,
Well, I think
honestly.
that it plays more into if you were to make it more act structure sectioned off. I think that's part of what would have made that better is the legal like, hey, we've kind of gotten you out of this mess. And I think it um another way to put it is without making him more important to the story, he's actually one of if you were to make the film shorter, he's one of the first things I'd cut is
That's
why
the
I don't
thing.
like it. Like that's
To
that's
me,
the
like
part that I'm like, ah.
to me with Marvel movies though,
Mhm.
it's not about like I'm sorry, like the Marvel movies, they're great movies, but like
Yeah,
they have their own issues and they're their own thing. They're not above criticism, but like it's a popularity contest.
sure.
Like
Yeah.
it's like I like not to sound like pejorative to you, but like it's kind of a haha, that's so cute, Jordan. Yeah, right. More Daredevil in a movie. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Good luck with that kid.
Yeah.
Because it's like no, it's about Thor, Spider-Man, Iron Man.
Sure.
Like
Yeah.
that's what people want to see.
No.
Unfortunately so, and that's an issue with a lot of movies, I would say, is that that is more what's being catered to rather than the, hey, let's make this cool and fun. Because
Yeah.
I would be, because like Matt Murdock, like it really is Matt Murdock. It's not really
Yeah.
Daredevil
Yeah.
in this part in the comics. Like he really is. That is who
That's
is
his
matters
shtick.
right
He
then and
he is
there.
a
The
lawyer.
yeah, the fact he's a superhero really doesn't play like he doesn't go around fighting a lot of crime. Like this is what he's working on. This is his main
Yeah.
focus because he's the lawyer, right? So of course they're gonna get Matt Murdock. It makes sense. And
Yeah.
I'd love to see more of that. I completely agree. And especially little like Daily Bugle headlines of him and Spider-Man walking out. That
Yeah.
would be awesome. I'd love that
Yeah.
because I
And that's where I guess with connectivity stuff, it's a weird line of do you do more or do you do less? Because again, I do think if I were to make a shorter cut of this film, you replace the Matt Murdock scene explaining the legality of the consequences with like, and honestly, the entirety of basically, all right, we're resuming exactly after uh No Way Home's or Far From Home's ending into No Way Home. Like all of that gets replaced with just a news montage of, well, Spider-Man is in 3 months later. Spider-Man has been dropped of all charges. This is crap. This is absolute horseshit. I can't
yeah,
believe it. This guy named Matthew Murdock comes in, and, he hires a blind man to get the sympathy vote from the jury. Like,
exactly.
that's where
Yeah,
Jay Jonah would like rant about it if you wanted to still have it be a cheeky reference, but you cut it shorter. That's
I
what you
really
end up
wish they would
doing,
make Jay Jonah into like a radio host DJ too. So he had
right?
like a Rush
Yeah.
Limbaugh style like talk show. Be good.
Yeah.
But for Spider-Man.
Yeah. So that's something where I think if you were to shorten the film, sadly, that's the first thing I cut.
Yeah.
But if you were to extend the movie, I think that's
Or
the
to
first
enrich
thing
it more.
I would expand on
Play
that
up.
more. Yeah. So,
And I really do think you could do things like just show like headlines with like Matt Murdock and Peter walking out of the courthouse and like
yep.
zooming in on that as like an establishing shot for location and pepper that in.
Yep.
News reports of him in the background, like you can see it. It's like, oh, there's Matt Murdock talking.
Yep. But
That would have been really fun.
absolutely. But ultimately, in terms of like the storytelling, uh, it really shows the power that having that connectivity. Because I think while Daredevil didn't get the same kind of respected acknowledgement, like he's there, cool.
Which I think it
Um,
deserves.
yeah, I think while
I
he
wish we
didn't
could
get,
get more from it.
yeah, we didn't get quite as much out of that. We did get it through the rest of that film because the rest of it
Yeah.
is an
Oh.
absolute blast, and it plays
Just
with
all
and
the
pays
Spider-Man,
homage. Yeah,
like
it really is
those three.
fantastic.
Come on, man. There's so many great just jokes, memes, just
Wholesome
lines. Like,
moments.
oh, yeah, just
Um,
oh.
that's something that like if you were making your own narrative, I mean, goodness, I try this with D&D stuff. I run Star Wars games. I do a lot of trying to connect different characters and having that interconnectivity and looping things back to where things came from. That's something that I really try to do with D&D storytelling. And I think that when I run games, that's something that people appreciate is that there's not often all that much of a throwaway thing. Usually it comes back at least in some form and fashion. As a player in my games, Connor, do you think that's something that holds true of what I've done? Like, do you think I managed to do that kind of stuff?
I would agree. I would say most things in your campaigns are kind of like Chekhov would be like Chekhov's gun. Like if it's
Yeah,
there and you mess with it, it's gonna go off at some point. Um, you're gonna have the random crowds here or there, but even then, it's like small little things that you've said to people in the past can come back to bite you in the ass or help you out,
yeah.
depending on what it is.
Ooh,
And
that's on a subject of Chekhov's gun.
but I would,
Could you imagine a longer extended cut of this movie where Matt Murdock being the lawyer is the Chekhov's gun and he actually helps with trying to rein in some of the villains later? Like even if it's
that would be
just
even better.
the like Doctor Strange picks up the lizard off screen, if Matt Murdock as Daredevil helped in that, like we get to
Yeah, like
see
Cop Mysterio.
yeah, like
That'd be cool.
they go into the bottom section basement of the sanctum and uh you just have Doctor Strange being like, "Oh, yeah, I have somebody working on one of them. He was like outright terrorizing people." And he just like does the little whoosh and out walks Daredevil with the lizard proper and just like, "All right." It walks out again.
Yeah,
That would be
and that's
kind
the
of
kind of
funny.
stuff I'd have really liked. Yeah, it would have been fun, especially because you're finally putting them in the cinematic universe. So like,
Mm-hmm.
it would have been nice to get some more
Yeah. Oh,
output, I guess.
so
Either
there you
way,
go.
it was still really. Eh.
Yeah, Spider-Man was fantastic. But
Oh,
that being said, if you have thoughts and feelings, leave them in the comments. Tell us what you thought about the movie, and
yes.
were there things that you would change? Were there things that you wanted more of, less of? Um, Let us know, and following that, we'll go ahead and wrap that up here. If you want to follow me, it's at Gillidan or Gillidan for the win. There is Gillidan Andronari on one of my social media platforms. I don't recall which one. Uh, that's another one. But if you wanted to see myself and my friend John, Fusro Doremi, we are playing Kingdom Hearts. We're aiming for once a week live streamed. So that'll be on Gillidan for the win. That'll be linked in the comments. Connor, do you have any plugs outside of Five Stream Connor?
Of course, there's always Fire Connor, my awesome repository of stupid things.
Hey.
And because I'm a man who doesn't like to have an answer for a question, I'll give a mediocre answer. Go ahead and hit me up if you play a Pokemon Showdown, nonsense narrator. Hit me up. Send me some games. Come catch the hands of my Quagsire Dino Core. Always down to play for some reason. Somebody's watching this and happens to play Pokemon.
Hey, there it is. Well,
Also, I've
yep.
had a bone to pick with Jordan all freaking week. I am not a slacker. Thank you. There is a freaking title that goes before that, and I have slacked off a lot to earn that title. I am a slifer slacker, thank you very much, and you will refer to me as such.
What?
I slacked a lot of homework off to get that title,
A
so
homework
you will
slacker?
respect it.
Was that what you're
The slifer. No, slifer slacker.
Slifer
It's all that.
slacker? Okay.
That's a joke you will only get if you watch the thing I'm talking about, because I like those.
I'm lost. I'm lost. Write it in the comments.
Well, that sucks.
Well, uh,
Oh, of
same
course.
same place. We're doing these once a week. And then as far as what day the week goes, we're still figuring that out. Depending on how quickly we can dish these out. But uh, come see us, subscribe,
Yep.
comment, like, hit the bell. Apparently, that's a thing. Weird. And we'll see you next
Feel
time.
free to hit dislike.
Yep. Later.
Bye.